The Australian Prime Minister has said the two gunmen who shot and killed 15 people, including a 10-year-old girl at Bondi Beach yesterday, were driven by Islamic extremism. The shootings targeted Jewish people attending a Hanukkah event. The perpetrators have been identified as a 50-year-old man who was killed by police and his son who's being treated for injuries in hospital.
The death toll may have been much higher were it not for this incredible act of bravery from Ahmed al-Ahmed, who charged at the gunman and disarmed him before being shot by the second shooter.
He's a national hero for sure, probably an international hero. A lot of people around the world wouldn't have done that. A lot of people would have run away from the gunfire.
And I just saw a table and I just dived under this table and I just lay on top of my daughter Capri. And I was just lying on top of her, just shielding her. I basically smothered her, made sure no part of her body was exposed. And the bullets were just going off, quack, 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 quack. People screaming and running. When about 2 arm lengths from me, there was a guy shot on the floor. I could just see him. He was going, help, help. And there was nothing I could do.
Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said the perpetrators were Islamic extremists that acted alone and were not part of a wider terrorist cell.
These two evil people have engaged in this act of anti-Semitism driven by ideology. It's an extreme perversion of Islam that has resulted in these catastrophic consequences.
Earlier, New South Wales police said their officers shot dead 50-year-old Saeed Akram and that the other gunman, his 24-year-old son Naveed, was being treated in hospital for severe injuries under armed guard. It is the deadliest mass shooting in Australia since 35 people were killed in Tasmania in 1996. Saeed Akram had a legal firearms licence for 6 weapons, which has led to calls for stricter gun control.
I think it's time that we have a change to the law in relation to the firearms legislation in New South Wales, but I'm not ready to announce it today.
For now, Australians are uniting behind the large Jewish community who were targeted in this heinous attack. Fergal Gallagher, RTE News.
Of the 15 victims who died in the Bondi Beach terror attack, the youngest was a 10-year-old girl, whilst the oldest was an 87-year-old Holocaust survivor. At least 2 of more than 40 injured remain in a critical condition.
10-year-old Matilda, who died in hospital following the shooting, was described as a bright, joyful and spirited child who brought light to everyone around her. Known as the Bondi Rabbi, Ellie Schlanger was one of the event organisers, his former classmate in London among those paying tribute.
He was a father. He had a 2-month-old baby in the prime of his life, taken by cold murderers.
Ellie was a really wonderful, warm, caring, vivacious, energetic, outgoing guy who loved people.
27-year-old French citizen Dan El-Kayam was an IT worker and talented footballer. The French President Emmanuel Macron said his thoughts were with his family and loved ones. Former police officer Peter Marr was working as a freelance photographer at the Hanukkah event when he was killed. Whilst 87-year-old Alexander Kleitman was a Holocaust survivor who had moved to Australia from Ukraine. He leaves behind 2 children, 11 grandchildren and his wife, who he reportedly shielded from the bullets. More than 20 people remain in hospital, including 2 police officers. Syrian-born Australian Ahmed al-Ahmed, who wrestled a weapon away from one of the gunmen, was shot in the hand and shoulder, according to his parents, who praised his bravery. Whilst across Sydney, long queues formed at a blood bank today to help hospitals deal with those injured in this horrific attack. Eleanor Burnhill, RTE News.
Members of the Irish Jewish community have attended an event in Herzog Park in Dublin to mark the second day of Hanukkah. Organised prior to the shootings in Bondi, the event was attended by the granddaughter of Chaim Herzog, after whom the park is named. The Minister for Justice, Jim O'Callaghan, attended on behalf of the government.
It was an event organised to mark the Jewish holiday Hanukkah, as well as the significant ties between the Irish Jewish community with Herzog Park in Dublin. But for those in attendance, events in Sydney were to the forefront of all their minds.
At the moment, the grief is immense. The barbaric attack yesterday was sickening. Some of the pictures going around on social media are particularly graphic, and we are shocked to the core.
It's a show of solidarity from the community that we're here. We're not going to be told how to run our lives. And there was talk of perhaps cancelling it after the events yesterday, but no outside events are going to influence the way we keep our traditions and the way we run our Jewish lives here in Ireland.
The granddaughter of Chaim Herzog, after whom Herzog Park is named, and over which there's been so much controversy in recent weeks, flew in for the event. Minister Jim O'Callaghan was also in attendance, lighting a candle to mark the second day of Hanukkah, a show of support from the Irish government to the Jewish community here.
So I very much want to say to the Jewish community that they're an extremely important part of our community, and I, as Minister for Justice, have it as an absolute imperative that they are protected and respected within Ireland.
This is a community that was already living in trepidation, those fears heightened further following the shootings in Bondi. They've welcomed the support from Gardaí at this time, but the Chief Rabbi has also said the current situation can't be addressed through policing alone. Alba Keneally, RTE News, Herzog Park in Dublin.
Now returning to our main story, just before we came on air, I spoke to the Chief Rabbi of Ireland, Yanni Wieder, and I began by asking about the mood of the people at that Hanukkah event in Herzog Park this evening.
Well, the attack was absolutely sickening. Some of the pictures going around of the people injured at the attack, very graphic, and this was a barbaric, heinous act of terrorism against the Jewish community first and foremost, but this was also an attack against our very values that underpin us as a civilized, moral society. Because if we can't come to a celebration like this and commemorate our festivals and celebrate them without worrying for our lives, then the world is a darker and dangerous place for all of us. So people were apprehensive about coming today. There have been Jewish communities across the world will have increased security at events like this. But I said to my community, at a time like this, we need to make the extra effort to come out, to be seen, to say that we're here and we're proud and we're not going to cower. The terrorists who carried out this attack yesterday, they want Jews in Sydney and around the world to live in fear. And our response is absolutely clear. We are here. We are going to continue to thrive. Hanukkah is all about lighting the light and sharing that light with the people around us. And we tried to continue to do that.
Now, I understand Gardaí are going to increase patrols at Jewish events. What are you envisaging that extra security would look like, and what would you be hoping for?
So we are deeply grateful to the Gardaí, not just for the support they've given us since the news broke of the attack yesterday, but for all their support over the last couple of years and before that. They've really been excellent around our communal institutions and whenever we've had events on. I'm not so involved on an operational level, but I did have a long chat with the Garda Commissioner yesterday. I'm really grateful to him for making contact, for reaching out. And the priorities are very clear. It's not just about security at an event itself. It's about intelligence, making sure that any threats are known about in advance so that they can be thwarted. It's about prosecuting people who have incited violence, who have made threats against the Jewish community or any other minority community. And as I've said, this is not just about policing, because we can continue to increase insecurity, to add more guards, to build our fences higher and higher, but we have to look at the root problem. There is, unfortunately, a hatred against Jewish people that is spreading across parts of Western society and, unfortunately, parts of Irish society as well. And we have to ask the questions, why is that happening? Who are the people that might single out a Jewish event or a Jewish person for attack? And what are we doing to make sure that there's no space for that type of hatred in our society?
Now, most people in Ireland pride themselves and feel we have a reputation for being welcoming and very tolerant. Are you saying this has changed now against the Jewish community here in Ireland?
When I came to this country 2.5 years ago, I inherited a community that were deeply proud to be both Jewish and Irish. They felt, for the most part, definitely that this country had given them the respect and the space to flourish and thrive. And there has been an increase in anti-Semitic incidents over the past couple of years. Unfortunately, it's manifested in many different ways. The Jewish Representative Council for Ireland is currently compiling a report with over 100 recorded incidents of anti-Semitic verbal or, unfortunately, in a couple of occasions, even physical attacks. But the trend is clear. We've seen an increase anti-Semitic graffiti targeted. We've had, in this very park, Herzog Park was dubbed with swastikas a few months ago. We've had graffiti explicitly calling to kill Jews. We had a man on the street on a late night bus that was verbally abused, screamed at, "You're a genocidal Jew." We had another fellow who was beaten up in a pub just because he was wearing a necklace that identified him as Jewish. I've had children in schools telling me that they have been bullied because of their Jewish identity, and many telling me that they are afraid to speak of their Jewish identity to their peers. And that's not to say that anti-Semitism has become a real concern for every Jew in Ireland on a day-to-day basis. That's not the case, but it is true that there has been an increase in incidents and there are growing concerns, and these need to be dealt with swiftly and seriously.
What do you think we need to see now to lessen this feeling within the Jewish community of anti-Semitism, and what would you like people watching tonight to understand about the Jewish community in Ireland at this moment?
Well, people often, first of all, we've received so many messages of sympathy and support over the last day and a half, but going back even before that, and those messages are so heartwarming and mean so much to receive. But for most people, I think people only realise there might be issues when it affects them. For example, as I mentioned in an earlier engagement, that there's a proposal on the table at the moment for the Irish Jewish Museum to expand their premises, and the reports that I think the RCE reported on over the weekend that some local residents had objected on the grounds that that building might be a security threat and might be targeted for acts of terror or crime because it will be a large conspicuous Jewish building. And I understand that anxiety, but I think people should understand that these are the type of concerns that members of my community might be facing on a daily basis, and the response can't be from local residents, let's make sure that a building like that is kept away from our streets. The response needs to be asking the question as a society, why is it that there are people who might be targeting Jewish institutions? Who are those people, and what are we doing to make sure that there's no place for that in our society?
All right, Chief Rabbi of Ireland, Yanni Weider, thank you for joining us on 6-1 this evening.
Thank you.